It says, now the angel of the Lord came and sat under the terebinth tree, which was in Ophrah, which belongeth to Joash the Abizierite. I'm going to mess that all up, but that's all right. While his son Gideon threshed wheat in the winepress in order to hide it from the Midianites. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him and said to him, the Lord is with you, you mighty man of valor. Can you highlight mighty man of valor? And Gideon said to him, oh, my Lord, if the Lord is with us, why then has all this happened to us? And where are all his mercies which our fathers told us about, saying, did not the Lord bring us up from Egypt? But now the Lord has forsaken us and delivered us into the hands of the Midianites. Then the Lord turned to him and said, go in this might of yours, and you shall save Israel from the hand of the Midianites. Have I not sent you? So he said to him, oh, my Lord, how can I save Israel? I need you to highlight that. How can I save Israel? Indeed, my clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my father's house. And the Lord said unto him, surely I will be with you, and you shall defeat the Midianites as one man. I was trying to figure out all different ways, different titles, different ways to say this, but I need to say it in the most simplistic way that I can. I need you to look right in somebody's face, and I need you to tell them, stop downplaying yourself. I need you to say it with conviction. Stop downplaying yourself. I need you to say it like you're talking to your children. Stop downplaying yourself. Now I need you to say this. Stop downplaying your calling. Woo! All right, y'all ready to go? I need y'all to loosen up a little bit, kick your shoes off, relax your feet, and just whatever you need to do. But we're ready to go get it. Anybody ready to go get it today? See, when I'm speaking, I'm always trying to figure out, how do I get you all of this information that I've studied? Because to me, all of it is so relevant to everything that's going on in these few minutes that I have to stand in front of you. And so I only have your attention for just a few minutes. So usually instruction or message, I'm supposed to leave you in suspense until I get about to the middle. And then I'm supposed to give you this big boom, and then that's the climax of my stuff. But even as a kid, I was never really that good with secrets. So I've gotten better as an adult. But I need you to get to the place where you understand that I've got to come right out and say, you need to stop downplaying the calling of God that is on your life. You need to stop. You need to tell somebody else that you know. Tell them, matter of fact, pull your phone out. Text somebody and say, stop downplaying your calling. Because every one of us knows somebody that is downplaying what God has called them to because they have a fear or an inadequacy or an insecurity that for some reason you're not pursuing what God told you to do. It got real quiet right there. But I need you to get excited just for a second because today we're about to celebrate the calling that God has in your life. And if you don't get nothing else out of this, I need you to look at yourself in the mirror this week and say to yourself, self, stop downplaying your calling. And see, what happens is sometimes we get so low and we get into a place and we think that because we're in a place of correction or we're in a place of being still for a period of time, then what we have done is we begin to downplay what God called us to do. And we begin to think that the gifts that he's given us aren't even worth anything. And when God begins to speak to us, instead of us responding to him with the authority that he has already put inside of us, we begin to reduce ourselves to our situations because we're insecure in the gift that God has given. Or we're insecure about the circumstance that we've gone through. But you got to get to the place that when you recognize that God has chosen you to do something, it's time for you to get up. Look at your neighbor and say, it's time to get up. Yeah, you blew it. Yes, you got knocked down. Yeah, it didn't work like you thought it was going to work. Yeah, you might have failed in some senses, but that does not mean that this is the finish line. It's just a pit stop on the way to where God called you to go. If a race lasts for 2 hours, a pit stop is just a period in time for you to slow down to get things right so you can get back out there and race again. Some of us are getting stuck in the pit stop. And so some of us have gotten to the place where we are so stagnant in our current position that if God was standing right outside in the parking lot, leaning on our car when we went out there, we would give him some reason for why we couldn't do what he said to do. Because you're so caught up sometimes in your current position. And we've got to get to a place that where instead of asking God, why did you choose me? We got to begin to ask him, how do you want me to do it? When God calls you to do something, he's already given you the tools that you will need to do it. We just got to stop questioning why God is using us and ask him, how do you want me to do this, God? And y'all know I'm talking to myself. For so long, even yesterday, I questioned God, why? Why me? Why has it got to be me? Y'all remember Moses? Moses got given every excuse that he could give. I don't talk well, God. I don't want to go back there. Them people ain't going to listen to me. Moses gave God every reason for why he couldn't do what God called him to do. And even myself, I sometimes struggle with, God, why did you choose me? Pick somebody else. Jonah told God, I would rather die. Just leave me here to die, because sometimes we get to a place where we're asking the wrong question. We got to stop asking why, and we got to ask God how. Sometimes when you tell your children, ain't it sometimes the most disrespectful thing when your kids say, you tell them to do something and they say why? I would rather my son say, how do you want me to do it? And why do you want me to do it? Because we try to get to the place where we don't say this saying right here, because I said so. And so Gideon was in this place, y'all, where Gideon was looking like, not me, Lord. But look how you got to remind yourself to stop downplaying the calling that God has on your life. And so we're talking about Gideon. And in verse 11, it says that he was threshing wheat in the winepress in order to hide. That's important. I need you to highlight, in order to hide from the Midianites. It says, and the angel of the Lord said to him, the Lord is with you, you mighty man of valor. So Gideon is in here doing what he considers the most minimal, the most low tier, the most non-important job. And the angel has shown up to him in the midst of what he thinks is just mundane, regular, everyday work. Y'all, it is power in what you consider the mundane. You would be surprised that minimal skill that you feel like you have is so important to the body of Christ. It's so important to that next person. And so the angel of the Lord has shown up to Gideon. And so Gideon is the son of Joash. And so the Lord has come to speak to him, and he calls him a mighty man of valor. You got to say that real strong, a mighty man of valor. He did something that my wife does to me every once in a while, and it catches me off guard. Every now and then she'll call me, and I'll say, hey, dear, how you doing? And she'll say something like, hey, sexy. And I'll be thinking, who are you talking to? She'll be like, hey, handsome. I'll be like, girl, you better, first of all, I'll be like, girl, you better stop playing with me, because you fine. But then what happens is she's seeing something inside of me that at that moment I don't see in myself. So what the angel is doing is she's responding to Gideon, and he's calling Gideon a mighty man of valor, although what Gideon feels like he's doing is unimportant to leading people out of bondage. God will see something in you, speak over it, and you'll be ready to disagree with him because it don't look like it to you. But he's already put it inside of you. And so Gideon responds to the Lord, well, God, if you with me, then why am I going through this mess? And he said, well, where are all these men? Now, Gideon got real brave after a while. Now, I don't know if I'm this brave, but I believe we do it from time to time. God, where are all those miracles that my mama, my daddy, my aunt, and my uncle, where's all of that deliverance that all these other people told us about? Where are you with this? How are you saying you with me, but I'm struggling? Anybody ever felt like that? Y'all, this is harder than I thought. I'm going to calm down just a little bit. He got to the place where he said, Lord, you have forsaken us, and delivered us into the hand of the Midianites. He is asking all of the questions. How did you let me get in this mess in the first place? But the issue with the children of Israel was the children of Israel were being the children of Israel. And they were being just like your children. And they was all, I don't know if anybody got children here, and your children always get into something. You got that one child that somehow is just always into something. You can bet if something broke at your house, you already know who it is. If the school called you, you assume they probably did it. And you just go out there and say, what did they do now? And sometimes your children don't want nothing. But here's the issue. The children of Israel were just being the children of Israel and what they were doing, and they were going in and out of idolatry. Look at Judges 6 and 1. Let's look at it real quick. It says, then the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord. So the Lord delivered them, which delivered in this term means he gave them. It means he handed them over into the hand of the Midianites for 7 years. And the hand of Midian prevailed against Israel. Because of the Midianites, the children of Israel made for themselves the dens, the caves, the strongholds which are in the mountains. It says, so it was whenever Israel had sown, the Midianites would come up, also the Amalekites, and the people of the east would come up against them, and they would encamp against them and destroy all of the produce of the earth as far as Gaza. So in other words, what they would do every season during harvest season, the Midianites and the Amalekites would come up and take over everything that the Israelites had worked so hard to harvest. Anybody ever feel like all your bills are due soon as you get paid? Sometimes you wish you didn't even get direct deposit, because if you didn't get it in the bank, then it couldn't come out. But that's what was happening to the children of Israel. They were in oppression, but they were in oppression because they kept playing around with sin. One of the first things we got to look at when we're going through situations, we've got to look at what did we do for us to be in the situation that we're in, because sometimes we'll blame God for things and decisions that we've created for ourselves. So now the children of Israel are in this promised land. They are in the place. They're in Canaan. They're where God told them to be. But what they have done is they have turned away from God, and they keep delving into idolatry and disobedience and being forgetful of the covenant that they made with God. Don't forget the covenant that you have with God. Don't forget your covenant. And what they would do is when they were in place of other people, they would commingle their beliefs with what God told them to do. And at times what they would do is they would begin to adopt the principles or the things that those other people would do. And so now they are getting to a place where they're worshiping Baal, which is the god of fertility and the god of rain. And they would build these poles up in front of their house, and they would worship him because they were commingling their beliefs. Look at somebody and say, don't commingle your beliefs. In other words, I need you to look at somebody right in their face and say, don't play with sin. Don't play with sin. So they made dens and they made caves in the mountains. And I love it when Elder Jackie say words like strongholds. I believe if you said strongholds, the church would be ready to erupt, because she said the principalities and powers and strongholds and the way she says it. But they were building these strongholds, which were barriers in the mountain, because they were trying to hide from the enemy, because they didn't want the enemy to attack them. And so now here we got Gideon asking, well, God, why have you forsaken me? You've been worshiping idol gods. You've been commingling with the enemy. You've been doing all of this foolishness. And then you want to put it on me as to why you ain't been blessed yet? Sometimes we got to go back to the original covenant that we made with God, and we got to get back to a place of repentance so that we can establish our relationship. And so oftentimes what we do when we get to those places, and sometimes they're from decisions that we have made, we begin to reduce the anointing and the calling that is on our lives when we cannot see God's plan. And so what God called you to do is not just something that comes and goes, would lead me to my first point. Your current condition does not determine your final destination. Your current condition does not determine your final destination. See, where you are right now does not always determine how much or how far God is going to take or to use you. But sometimes what we do is we think that because we're going through a situation that God has now removed his hand from us and that what he said was going to happen is never going to happen again. I need you to look at your neighbor and I need you to say, stop downplaying your calling. We don't reduce our calling to a mistake. There are many times. That's why Jesus came. Jesus came so that we could have life and we have it more abundantly. And now we live under grace. So even when we mess up, we get to go to God and say, God, I am sorry. And God doesn't always make us go start back at zero. He doesn't always make us go start from where we started in the beginning. And we've got to make sure that we understand it. But we got to make sure that we know that you get really innovative when you get in times where you're trying to figure out what God is about to do next. Sometimes when you get in that low place, that's when you develop your businesses. You know when I learned how to make money? When I didn't have none. You know when my marriage got better? After it had gotten real bad. And sometimes when we get in those situations or setbacks, those are the exact places that God gives us the ingenuity or the innovation to do exactly what he called us to do. Because if it wasn't for that situation, some of us wouldn't even pray. And so what God did is he turned the children of Israel back into oppression of the Midianites because he was going to restore everything that the enemy had taken from them. Look at your neighbor and say, God will restore. But stop downplaying your calling. When you go through those situations, when you go through those difficult times, stop questioning why, God, and start asking God, how, God. I wish you would just change your language just for a few minutes. Instead of saying why, ask how. When your boss asks you to do something at work, stop asking why, ask how. When God say don't leave that job yet, stop asking why, ask him how. Because he will give you the patience to stay in that job until you get the one that you're really looking for. Stop asking God, why do I got to go back to school? And ask him, God, how? God, if you said it, then you will make provision for it to happen. You got to ask God how. Oh, goodness. And so some of the situations that we go through push us to develop into the people that God has called us to be. You may never develop that character. You might never pray. If you never went through some of the situations, you might not ever repent. Some of us wouldn't even be saved if we didn't lose some things. It took God taking stuff away from us for us to make the promise that, God, if you bless me, I'll serve you. So it takes the situation sometimes. So stop downplaying your calling. It's just a situation. This is just a pit stop. Your unemployment is just a pit stop. Your financial situation is just a pit stop. Your loneliness is just a pit stop. Don't let what you're going through make you feel like God is no longer with you. And so the angel came to Gideon and said, the first thing he said is, I am with you. And Gideon sound like us. Well, how are you with me if I'm going through this? So we've got to make sure we don't downplay what God has called us to. And just because we're going through a period of correction, because we messed up, God hadn't taken his hand off of you yet. If my child messes up right now, there's still a place in my house for them. I love my children. And we learned last week, we said, pray and do not lose heart. How much more does God love you than a judge that would avenge for a widow? We say stuff like, if he dresses the lilies with beauty and splendor, how much more? And we say all of that stuff, but how much more does God love you that he will begin to restore you? Look at somebody and say, I am restored. Elder Joe prayed a prayer last week of restoration for people in here because some of us have gotten so down and we've gotten to a place where we feel like we ain't never going to get back up. And sometimes you looking up, you can't even see your way. But guess what? You still stay looking up. Oh, man, God is so amazing. So we got to stop downplaying. But what we do is we fail to realize that oftentimes this position that we're in is developing the skills that we need to go do the thing that God is telling us to do. Look at verse 11. Again, it says, while his son Gideon threshed wheat in the winepress in order to hide it the Midianites, and the angel appeared to him. He said, "The Lord is with you, you mighty man of valor." See, a mighty man of valor was a strong man. It was a strong one. It was a warrior. He was a hero. He was a powerful man. But what happens is Gideon isn't doing anything that he feels is powerful at the moment. What he's actually doing is hiding. And so Gideon was threshing wheat in secret, hiding from the Midianites' oppression, and he wasn't in any type of position of strength or any type of leadership. He was actually in a place where he was at one of his weakest moments. See, what happened normally when you thresh wheat, you would thresh wheat on a high place, and you would beat the wheat so it separated the wheat and the chaff, and the wind would blow it away, and you'd be left with the good stuff. Because they were in hiding from Midian and didn't want Midian to know that they were harvested, they were down in a wine press so nobody could see it. Sometimes you become the most innovative that you can be when you are at your lowest place. And some of us are working on a powerful thing in a low place right now, and you think God doesn't see it. Just because you are working on it down here doesn't mean he's not going to elevate you up here one day. You keep working. Stop worrying about who sees you. He was hiding. He didn't feel like no mighty man of valor. He probably felt insecure. He felt inadequate. He felt like nobody was there. Why would even God see this work? So how could you come to me and tell me that I'm a mighty man of valor when I'm doing some work that don't nobody understand or appreciate? God will cause you to be innovative in your low place and develop the skill that he will use when he elevates you to your high place. Me and my wife talked about this the other day, and we talked about this in the new members class, and we talked about this last year. I didn't ask to be nobody's pastor. If you had told me I was going to be one, I would have left. This ain't what I was trying to do. But I worked in over 20 ministries in this church, and there were times that I didn't care who was there. But if somebody had said, "You're going to be a pastor," I'd have been like, "You talking to the wrong one." One, because I didn't want to hear, but two, I felt like, how could God use such a lowly person like me from Henderson, North Carolina, that grew up throwing hay on the back of a trailer as a kid walking behind a tractor, to be somebody's pastor? Somebody in here is struggling, trying to figure out if you are even usable by God, because you're basing what God called you to on how you see yourself. But God said, "You are a mighty man of valor." And what Gideon was developing in that wine press was something that if you begin to look up any military general, let me get to it. I'll go right back to my notes. Let me get back to it. See, what happened, Gideon was being strategic. He was being strategic. If you go research what a military general, one of the top qualities of a military general was being a strategic visionary. Do you know one of the most visionary, yes, that ain't even a word, but one of the biggest visionaries I ever know? This man right here. Yeah, y'all give it up. We talked in the new members class, and we talked about how he had developed pictures. He developed pictures of what this land was going to look like, and what this church was going to look like, and how affordable housing was going to be right here, and how we were going to build on that land. If you walk in the back, you'll see fields on that land. You see a family life center on that land right there. That is a visionary. We were in 401 South 7th Street at the time with a van and a building and bars on the window, right, Miss Betty? When he started writing down, because what God will do, God will develop the thing that you're supposed to take over in your high place sometimes when you feel like you are in your lowest place. We started a jet ski company in 2009. That's what, 16 years ago. I didn't have no money. None. Matter of fact, I had lost my job. And I went to go rent a jet ski, and I said, "Oh, man, this is a good idea." Now, I was mistaken, sadly. I didn't know how hard it was going to be. But what happened is God began to develop me a plan that my kids have worked, that his kids have worked, that people that have gone, Hakeem has worked there, people in his church, this church have worked for us when I was in my lowest place. Stop downplaying the calling that God has on your life when you were in your low places. So let's look at it. That mundane work that you feel like you're doing, that cleaning the bathroom, that working with the young people. Man, sometimes that's just a setup for God to build you up. So let's look at it. Verse number 15. It says, so he said to him, oh, my Lord, how can I save Israel? Indeed, my clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my father's house. I'm going to give you this point like you would tell your children. I'm telling you, y'all, you need to write this down. Write it in all capital letters, too. Stop making excuses. You need to say this to yourself. Look in the mirror and say, stop making excuses. And I'm going to add this on the end of it. For what God has already empowered you to do. Some of you have everything you need to do, everything God has called you to do, but you are still making excuses for why you haven't done it yet. Oh, dog, why you ain't done it yet, man? You ain't got to answer me right now, but I'm going to ask you later because I believe it's on you. Look at your neighbor and say, why haven't you done it yet? Stop making excuses. You got to say it. Y'all ain't saying it hard enough. Say, stop making excuses. And so Gideon's father was Joash, who was from the tribe of Manasseh, which was the weakest family group from the tribe of Manasseh. And what they began to do, like I said, in his father's yard, he began to maintain this altar for Baal, which shows that his family has fallen into idolatry. And so with Gideon being from this tribe, what happened back in the day, his grandfather, his great-grandfather was actually the oldest, and then he should have had the right, but then Joseph, his grandfather, switched his hands and he gave his right to another. So his family was the lowest. And then if you look at the story, it says Gideon said, and then I am the lowest in my family as well, which would indicate that he was possibly the youngest as well. So his whole life he's been going through because his family ain't got nothing or feel like he don't have anything. And then Gideon is also the lowest and doing the lowest tier work as well. Some of you been dealing with this stigma on your life, your whole life, on how you ain't going to be nothing, or how you ain't nothing, on how you less than, or how you ain't your mama and daddy's favorite, how you was an accident. I need you to understand that the calling of God is still on your life. So you got to stop making excuses because of where you came from or who you was married to or who you used to date or who used to be in your life. Look at your neighbor and say, stop making excuses. And so what happened? Some of you may not have the degree. Some of you may have had to drop out of college. Some of you might have gotten pregnant. Some of you might have been in a bad marriage. Some of you might have gotten divorced. But that's no excuse for you to continue to pursue what God called you to. Don't let your current situation stop you from getting to your destination. So first of all, you got to hold on to that, and you got to stop making excuses because God is with you. You got to stop making excuses. And the reason why you've got to stop making excuses, let's look at it. Let's look at verse 25. Because the gift and the calling that God give you, y'all, they ain't even for you. The gift and calling that he gives you is not for you to deliver yourself. So the first assignment that he gave Gideon wasn't even for him. It was for Gideon's family. So God called him a mighty valor and gave him instruction. So let's look at it. Verse number 25, it said, now it came to pass the same night that the Lord said to him, take your father's young bull, the second bull of 7 years old, and tear down the altar of Baal that your father has, and cut down the wooden image that is beside it, and build an altar to the Lord on top of this rock in the proper arrangement, and take the second bull and offer it as a burnt sacrifice. Let's look down at number 28, verse number 28. It says, and when the men of the city arose early in the morning, there was the altar of Baal torn down. Let's go ahead and skip down to 29. It says, so they said to one another, who has done this? And when they had inquired, they said, Gideon the son of Joash. And the men went to Joash. He said, bring your son out here. 31 says, but Joash said to all who stood, would you plead for Baal? Would you save him? Let the one who would plead for him be put to death. by the morning. See, the thing is, what God did is God called him out. He first called him. He invited him in, and he told him, I want you to go do something. But that thing wasn't for him. The thing was for his family to see that he had been called out. And so he had to go back and tear down the idols that his family had been worshiping. Some of us need to stop worshiping the idols of poverty. Some of us need to start worshiping the idols of I can't be nothing. Some of us need to start worshiping the idols, or I'm a bastard, or I'm an orphan. You got to get to a place where you do what God called you to, because your family is waiting on you to get in the rightful place so that they can follow God. What he called Gideon to do wasn't for Gideon. It was for Gideon to lead the children of Israel out of oppression. And it started with his family. Sometimes God will call you to something that is expected to change the inheritance that you are going to leave for your family. There are things that you've been dealing with your whole life. Your mama told you to do this. Your daddy told you to do this. Your uncle told you you weren't going to be nothing. You weren't supposed to be here no way. We need to tear down those idols that we've been worshiping that's keeping us from getting to what God called us to. I tell the story all the time. I got free lunch. But guess what? Most of the people around me got free lunch. So we didn't think nothing about it. Then I thought we really made it. I had reduced lunch. And it was 40 cents. And I was like, man, my daddy doing all right. But because everybody around me was getting reduced lunch, I thought we were doing all right too. Our rent when I grew up was $100. Our rent was $100. And y'all, it's hard to say sometimes, because sometimes if I'm not careful, I will let that mentality that I had when I was in Henderson, North Carolina, stay on me. But God called me out of there. And part of the reason he called me out of there was so I could show my family and my friends back home that God is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we could ask or think. And I didn't tell nobody. But I held on to it. One day, me and Pastor Campbell went to lunch. I had been at church for 16 years. And I started telling him where I came from. And he was like, I felt like you were this silver spooner. And I tell the story. If we didn't pay the oil bill on Thursday, they came and filled your oil drum up on Friday. You cold till Monday. We had kerosene heat where you put a pan of water on top of it and you heat it up. We had an oil heater where you light that thing and drop it down in there. I had to get out of my old mindset and start worshiping some of the old things. Because if you're not careful, your mindset will become an idol. And you'll feel like because you've been through something and you've been low before, you ain't going to never be nothing. But I need you to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I'm done downplaying what God called me to be. And I'm going to get to the last point and we're getting out of here. My last point is real easy. The Lord said to him, he said it to him multiple times. He said in verse 16, he said, surely I will be with you. You shall defeat the Midianites as one man. This is the last thing that I need you to remember. I need you to remember, it's real easy. I need you to remember that God is with you. I want you to write it down. I want you to circle it. I want you to highlight it. My mother named me Isaiah Emmanuel Hunter. Emmanuel means God is with you. And every time I get to a place that I don't know what's going on, even if I messed up, I got to look at my own name and I say, Jehovah is God, and God is with me. So it doesn't matter where I am. God is with you. It doesn't matter what you're going through. I need you to understand that God is with you. It doesn't matter how you failed. I need you to understand that God is with you. It doesn't matter what your family said about you. I need you to understand that God is with you. It doesn't matter if you dropped the ball, if you lost the house, if you lost your car, if you lost your dog. I need you to understand that God is with you. I need somebody to shout out, God is with me. Somebody stand to your feet and give God a praise.